Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're tackling a term you hear absolutely everywhere in the business world: corporate social responsibility. CSR. But what does it actually mean when a company says it's trying to do good?
So let's just cut right to the chase, shall we? Is all this CSR talk a genuine commitment to making the world a better place, or is it just a really clever marketing strategy? That's the big question we're going to unpack.
All right, first things first, let's get on the same page. At its heart, CSR is this idea that a company is accountable to society's ethical standards. And it's not just about, writing a check to a charity. It's about building those social values right into the DNA of the business, creating real value for everyone.
Okay, so that all sounds pretty good in theory, right? But does doing good actually pay off? Let's take a look at the actual numbers and see if there's a solid business case for being socially responsible.
Well, the impact starts right at home, with the company's own people. It's pretty staggering, actually. When a company has a clear, strong purpose, something like 90% of its employees say they feel more inspired and more loyal. That's not just some feel-good metric. That is the engine of a truly motivated and innovative team. And that positive vibe doesn't stop at the office door. It extends all the way to the customer. A huge 87% of us, we're more likely to open our wallets for a company that champions an issue we actually care about. Our values are literally shaping how we shop.
But what about the bottom line? This is where it gets really compelling. Companies that have strong, authentic CSR programs see, on average, a 19% bump in their return on investment. The message here is crystal clear. Purpose isn't just an expense, it's a powerful driver of long-term profit. Okay, so the evidence is pretty hard to ignore. But how does a company actually do CSR? Turns out, it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. There are really three main ways businesses tend to approach this.
You can almost think of it as an evolution. It all started with the classic economic model, where the only thing that mattered was making a profit for shareholders, as long as you stayed within the law. Then, thinking evolved to the stakeholder model. This one expands that circle of responsibility to include employees, customers, the whole community. But the most cutting-edge approach, that's the integrative model. That's where doing good isn't a separate department, it is the business. It's what drives the entire strategy.
So let's make this real for a second. Think about a company like Patagonia, which is all in on the environment, or a global giant like Coca-Cola, or a disruptor like Tesla. Where would you place them on this spectrum? Each one has taken a really different approach to this idea.
But here's the thing. There's a massive risk involved. What happens when a company's promise to be responsible is just for show? It's got a name: greenwashing. And when the public figures it out, believe me, the fallout can be absolutely devastating.
Volkswagen's clean diesel scandal is probably the poster child for getting this wrong. They marketed their cars as clean and eco-friendly. That was their whole brand. But behind the scenes, they were installing devices to cheat on emissions tests. That lie ended up costing them more than $30 billion, and it just shattered the trust they had built with their customers.
And you see this exact same tension in other places, like fast fashion. A brand might launch a conscious collection, which sounds great, but how real is that when your entire business model is built on mass production and, let's be honest, waste? It's a contradiction, and consumers are getting smarter about spotting it. The point is, faking it is just a terrible strategy. You're not just risking a bad tweet, you risk losing your customers for good. You risk investors pulling their money out. You risk your best employees walking out the door. And you risk regulators coming down on you hard. The damage can be deep, and sometimes it's permanent. So, if authenticity is the name of the game, how do we tell the difference? How can we spot real commitment versus just empty words? And what does all of this mean for you and the choices you'll make in your career? This is where it's super helpful to know these two terms. A simple way to think about it is this: CSR is the why. It's the company's philosophy, its promise, its values. But ESG, that stands for environmental, social, and governance. That's the what. It's the hard data, the real metrics that investors and all of us can look at to see if a company is actually walking the walk. And that brings this whole conversation right back to you. As you start thinking about your future, what's going to matter more? Would you take a high-paying job at a company that has, let's say, a shaky reputation? Or would you prefer to work for a place that really aligns with your own values?
There's no one right answer, but it's a choice more and more of us are facing.
So as we wrap things up here, let's just quickly recap the big ideas. We've seen there's a powerful business case for CSR. We've talked about why it's so important to think about all your stakeholders. We've looked at the serious dangers of greenwashing, and we've seen how these ideas connect to real companies and create long-term value, especially through ESG metrics.
Ultimately, if you remember just one thing from this explainer, let it be this. In today's economy, doing good isn't just the right thing to do anymore. It's also the smart thing. The companies that are going to win in the future will be the ones that understand that purpose and profit aren't enemies. They're two sides of the very same coin.